Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? I'm sorry. This is Merrick Garland. I figured I don't know what he sounds like. I figured I would come in and do the show today for David because I got nothing else to do. I'm not very busy. Empty Wheel would, of course, disagree, and perhaps violently. I don't know. If you confronted her, I suppose it's possible. There's, golly, a lot going on. And I've been watching Marcy getting like really irritated with people, I don't know, going a little overboard, I think, in battling with people who feel sure that Merrick Garland isn't doing anything or not enough. Even if you kind of mildly disagree, she doesn't like it a great deal. So watch out. Beware of what you're getting into if you decide to mix it up with her about whether or not Merrick Garland is doing enough. But I will say, we won't have to wait all that long before we know what the actual answer is. And I'm as reassuring as it is to see Marcy list the number of things that they're doing and the people that they've been after and investigated and even put away in all this. It still feels like the people who deserve it aren't going to get what's coming to them, and that's going to continue to be the big problem we have with, democracy in the United States of America and probably worldwide. So, I think I think it's fair game to be concerned, let's say, that we'll never see the correct judgment brought down on the people who deserve it. And they haven't deserved it more since it all began than they do today, because the news is rife with Nixonian plus level wrongdoing on the part of the so-called Trump administration. And there's not much you can say about it other than, if you're a fan of the Ford Mustang, today is the day to be tweeting around about our favorite decoration of those racing versions of the Ford Mustang, the Trump Mustang. Everybody can run around today saying that the only cure for what is being revealed in the newspapers, today or months ago, depending on which publications you read, is that the only cure for it, Trump Mustang. That's all we can say about this stuff. All right. Plenty going on here. It is, I haven't told you what day it is today. And, you're not going to be able to do anything unless you know that it's Tuesday, March 29th, 2022. And therefore time for another show. It is Tuesday. The hearings before the Senate Judiciary Committee on the confirmation of, or I guess the nomination, we hope it's the confirmation of Judge Brown Jackson, or I guess she just goes by Judge Jackson, I think. Judge Jackson, to keep everything nice and short and remind everybody that, she's a damn judge. Anyway, stop judging. She'll be doing the judging around here. Thank you very much. Except we hope that she's now doing the justicing around here, I guess. So doing justice will be her job. We'll see how well that goes and how soon she can begin. But with that, the public hearings portion of the program behind us, we may find that Joan McCarter is free to join us today, unless she and Merrick Garland would like to join the construction crew next door who have returned to rebuild the deck that they took up last week. And I guess now the loud stuff happens. So there we go. Some banging in the background, some hammering, and I think they're using a nail gun and putting down some Trex decking. So hopefully, I don't know. Maybe that will reduce the noise. But there's also something that they're doing that causes a tremendous vibration as well. So we'll all enjoy that as it goes on. I don't think it can get in the way of our discussion of the news of the day. Let's see. Where should we begin? Yes. I think the headline on everyone's mind, although we should go to Bill's tweet. But first, I want everybody to know that Donald J. Trump says he made a hole-in-one yesterday. And that is the news. There's a war going on. There's a global pandemic. People are smacking each other at the Oscars. People are one-upping one another with worse stories of worst things that happened at the Oscars before, so that everybody stopped saying that yesterday was the ugliest day ever at the Oscars. Get the name of this day at the Oscars out of your mouth, sir. There are worse things that have happened in the past, and it's true. It's very interesting, always very eye-opening. Why it's a one-upmanship game, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, the way I perceive these things. But anyway, I'm interested in learning all these things. But it doesn't matter. Something. You all have to listen to the rest of the news. Yeah, he says he made a hole-in-one yesterday, golfing with some professionals, as he sometimes does, like some tour pros who were his guests or whatever. I don't know what that had to do with it. But he wanted to let everybody know that he doesn't want to brag about it, but he's name dropping who he's golfing with. Anyway, it's certainly possible he golfs enough. Eventually, you're going to hit a hole in one. It's great. We can congratulate on him and not feel bad about that at all. Congratulations to Donald Trump for doing. I think he's probably a reasonably good golfer. I mean, he's lying about how good he is, but he likes playing golf, and he made a hole in one. That should make him happy. Congratulations. May you take it to your grave and do so on the express bus, I guess, is all I can tell you. And Godspeed. Fantastic. You finally accomplished something that I believe that you accomplished. And I don't know, somehow that's an important step forward. The rest of the news, though, I thought I might share with you after telling you that Bill has announced that the show is live now, the Kagro in the Morning radio show, that is. Joe Biden, he says, likes to say, show me your budget and I'll show you who you are. Does he like to say that? He has said it, I think. Today, Kagro X, that's me, Merrick Garland, performs a budgetoscopy on President Dogface Pony Soldier. Okay, and that's no slack, Jack. It sounds very slangy. This whole thing is going to go really well. And we hope that Joan McCarter will help us dissect that, because last time she was here, she had pointed out we haven't seen the budget yet, and it's kind of late in the process. But rules are out the window. Who cares? Anyway, the budget is done. They heard the show 2 weeks ago, and they said she's going to be off the air probably covering the hearings the next week. So we got 2 weeks to write a budget, and I guess they've done it. So congratulations. They got a lot of people scrambling around there. In the meantime, though, it should be noted that we found out that Orange Nixon has got a gigantic gap in the phone records. If you thought 18 and a half minutes was too much and that Nixon had to go, you'll love the 7.5 hour gap in not the actual recordings of the phone conversations, though I'd love to have them, but in the records of the White House phone logs. There's just a giant hole in the phone logs, I guess, that were turned over. We'll read the damn story and figure out what's going on, and we'll shut the whole thing down until we figure out what's going on. You've likely heard the news, but you haven't heard me scream about it when I read it. So that's what you're here for. It's Bob Woodward and Robert Costa, the powerhouse team that something, and we hope that they have as much success bringing down Orange Nixon as they did bringing down the original, what would we call him? Gray Nixon, I don't know. January 6th, White House logs given to House show 7-hour gap in Trump calls. The House Select Committee is now investigating, they're finally getting around to it, whether it has the full record, and whether Trump communicated that day through back channels, phones of aides, or personal disposable phones, according to people familiar with the probe. So, what's up? And they're rolling some video of the texts from Ginny Thomas to Meadows, but we know about that. We spent all day yesterday on that one, and all weekend, in fact. Internal White House records from the day of the attack on the U.S. Capitol that were turned over to the House Select Committee show a gap in President Donald Trump's phone logs of 7 hours and 37 minutes, including the period when the building was being violently assaulted, according to documents obtained by the Washington Post and CBS News. I saw CBS News figured prominently in the early tweeting about this piece, too. So credit where credit is due there, I suppose. I was going to add, my own commentary to this, but I think we'll get to it. But obviously, Donald Trump has never not been making phone calls for a 7-hour and 37-minute stretch a day in his life. ever. I mean, perhaps in his infancy. But other than that, I mean, the man lives on the phone. As an adult, quote unquote adult, he lives on the phone. And, you know, the big problem that I guess I'm sure revealed in the writing here, if I will give them the courtesy of going ahead and reading their reporting, is that the real problem is there are, you know, a dozen phone calls that we already know of from the other end and have established have taken place, but that aren't on the White House call logs, which means that as a matter of fact now, there are phone calls that the president made that are not reflected on the White House phone logs, which means something. I guess at a minimum, it means that he was making phone calls that ought not to be considered and weren't, I guess, considered at the White House to be official business, which will create a problem for establishing the executive privilege over their content or even their existence, the records of their existence. But also, of course, it hints that they went out of their way to erase the record. And of course, as he's been claiming in various court cases, that everything he was doing is privileged and was in fact official business because it was the official business of the President of the United States to prevent this great fraud that he claims was going on the part of the Biden campaign and everyone else involved in installing the rightfully elected president in his term of office. He had to stop. And that was his duty as president and commander-in-chief. I just didn't have to keep any records of it except for the law that says you have to keep records of it. But other than that, everything's fine. The lack of an official White House notation of any calls placed to or by Trump for 457 minutes. I like that they've switched units here. How many seconds is that? That's I mean, you're talking about Trump's attention span. You might as well do it in seconds. 457-minute gap on January 6, 2021, kind of an important date, from 11:17 a.m. to 6:54 p.m., so just before he took the stage, I guess, at the Ellipse rally, from that all the way through the end of the riot, pretty much. Means the committee has no record of his phone conversations as his supporters descended on the Capitol, battled overwhelmed police, and forcibly entered the building, prompting lawmakers and Vice President Mike Pence to flee for safety. Also prompting Capitol police officers to shoot protesters, Capitol police officers on the House floor to draw their weapons and brandish them so that the rioters wouldn't continue trying to break through the House doors onto the floor, even though they eventually got there, and all sorts of other fun things that happened that day. The 11 pages of records, which consist of the president's official daily diary and the White House switchboard call logs, were turned over by the National Archives earlier this year to the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th attack. And if we recall correctly, that this was something that he battled for months to keep out of their hands, and then just, lost, and then appealed it anyway, and then lost the appeal, and appealed that too, and lost that too. And then Ginny Thomas, who was texting the whole conspiracy plan back and forth with Mark Meadows at the time, tells her husband, who's on the Supreme Court, no, you should actually help him block those records. But I guess he figured he couldn't do it alone, and Ginny Thomas can only marry one Supreme Court justice at a time, so she's necessarily limited in that capacity, though I'm sure she looked into the possibility of expanding her reach. The records show that Trump was active on the phone for part of the day. Common sense will tell you that. Documenting conversations that he had with at least 8 people in the morning and 11 people that evening. The 7-hour gap also stands in stark contrast to the extensive public reporting about phone conversations he had with allies during the attack, such as a call Trump made to Senator Mike Lee of Utah, seeking to talk with Tommy Tuberville. Did we say it's Tuberville? Like Tupperware, maybe. Republican of Alabama. I mean, he's barely a senator, but whatever. And a phone conversation he had with House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. You all remember that. I wish they would put the details of those in there. Remember, he's calling, because it properly puts in context how stupid Trump is. And I like to have a reminder of that every day. Remember that he talks with Mike Lee thinking he's called Tuberville, however the hell he pronounces his name, and leaves him a message. Hey, Coach, how you doing? Something. We need a touchdown of revolution here. whatever. I don't know what you would say to the guy and what he would understand anyway. And Mike Lee actually owned the phone that got the call. What the hell's going on here? And then, of course, the phone conversation with Kevin McCarthy, in which Kevin McCarthy says, you got to call your people off. They're breaking in the windows. We're all in danger here. Well, I guess they take the election more seriously than you. Whatever the hell is. You remember that conversation. We all know about that. The White House phone logs has nothing about that. I didn't talk to the guy. I don't know who Kevin, he's a coffee boy. I never heard of him before. The House panel is now investigating whether Trump communicated that day through back channels, phones of aides, or personal disposable phones, known, I guess, in the crime industry anyway, as burner phones, according to two people with knowledge of the probe who, like others interviewed for this report, spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive information. The committee is also scrutinizing whether it received the full logs from that day. One lawmaker on the panel said the committee is investigating a, quote, possible cover-up. And you know what that means. Whenever you use the word cover-up, it's a dramatic music moment. Possible cover-up of the official White House record from that day. And you might remember there was another president who had a problem with that. And it wasn't so much the crime as it was the cover-up. And I use orange cover-up every day. And I think it's just terrific and you should all try it. Anyway. Where were we? Yes, another person close to the committee said the large gap in the records is of intense interest to some lawmakers on the committee, many of whom have reviewed copies of the documents. You would hope they all have. Both spoke on condition of anonymity. There's that nice rumbling sound going on. I gotta get this. Hold on a minute. I'm gonna go out there and ask this guy to build a studio. Might as well. There's a little noise going on. All right, so let's see. Intense interest. Many of whom have reviewed the copies of the documents. Right, both. Okay, two more sources spoke on condition of anonymity because they weren't authorized to discuss internal committee deliberations. So a little leaky here. And I think I saw Armando this morning noting for the record that the New York Times, I guess, wasn't one of the places they decided to leak to for whatever reason. Anyway, embedded here in the Washington Post's coverage, anyway, is a copy of the president's morning schedule. And so at 11:17 a.m., that was the last phone call noted with an unidentified person, which I guess they can do legally on the daily call sheet or whatever. By 11:38, he's gone out to the south grounds of the White House. 11:39, he's motored from the south grounds of the White House to the Ellipse. 11:41, he arrives at the Ellipse and went to the tent. 11:55, the president went on stage. So let's see, it's a little under, 40 minutes between hanging up the phone and getting on the stage. And then he's on the stage for an hour and 15 minutes and then rides back. He takes a 2-minute car ride back to the White House. And then, let's see. Oh, look at this. A very important meeting. The president met with his valet, or valet if you're British, I suppose. And why we don't say it that way, I don't know. But I guess we like the original French. Let's see. He goes to the Rose Garden. That's the next thing on there. So he meets with the valet at 1:21 p.m. Then nothing until 4:03 p.m. in what time he goes to the Rose Garden. That's when I guess he starts working on trying to tape the message. You're all very special, beautiful people, and we love you, but go home thing, right? And he won't. That's how long it takes to convince him to do that. And then he tapes the thing, he returns to the Oval Office, and then he goes to the residence at 6:27. That's the full readout of his day. So let's see. Then the phone records, I guess. Oh, no, there's more going on in the residence and who he talked to. Anyway, you don't need to know necessarily all of that. The important part is what's missing here. The records show that former White House chief strategist Stephen K.G.B. Bannon, who said on his January 5th podcast that, quote, all hell is going to break loose tomorrow. Remember that? Spoke with Trump twice on January 6th about the hell that was breaking loose, presumably. In a call that morning, Bannon urged Trump to continue to pressure Pence to block congressional certification of Joe Biden's victory. Trump was known for using different phones when he was in the White House, according to people familiar with his activities. Occasionally, when he made outbound calls, the number would show up as the White House switchboard's number, according to former Trump cabinet official, an official. Other times, he would call from different numbers, or no number would appear on the recipient's phone, the official said. A spokesman for the committee declined to comment. In a statement Monday night, Trump said, "I have no idea what a burner phone is. To the best of my knowledge, I never even heard the term." Which is, his old play. I don't know what that is. I never heard this. Many people don't know this, but I heard of a thing called burner phones. Maybe you've just heard of this like I have. But, more mob speak that he learned from the movies. If I just say I don't know what it is, I never even heard the term, everybody has to believe me, and then they can't prove stuff, except there's actual physical proof out there for other things. And whether or not he ever heard the term burner phone doesn't make any bit of difference. But that's something he can deny, and no one can prove that he definitely heard the term burner phone. Even if there's a transcript of him having a conversation somewhere where somebody says, "Do you know what a burner phone is?" And he says, "Yes, I do know what a burner phone is." In the transcript, he'll say, "I don't remember doing that. To the best of my knowledge, I don't even recall this conversation. I think I was just humoring the person. I didn't want to say I didn't know what it was, but I didn't know what it was. I never heard it before. And I never heard it since, and you can't prove that I have." And, then they'll hang that, the whole thing proceeding hangs up on whether or not he heard of it. Who cares what he thinks of it's called, whatever. All he knows is use a bunch of different phones. That's something I learned from the movies will help you avoid detection. Except that when you are the most watched individual on the planet, it is very difficult, it should be very difficult to believe that you will be able to evade detection in electronic communications. You're definitely going to leave a trail behind, and you're definitely going to be able to get your hands on the records that will establish that trail. You may never get the content of the call, and that's problematic, and it's big problem in terms of whether or not you can actually, hang them for it. And I mean, really actually hang them for it. I think they would electrocute. I guess they'd do lethal injection if you were convicted of treason and sentenced to death now. But traditionally, we've hanged them or electrocuted them, and I'm a traditionalist when it comes to that. Anyway, so here he is pretending he doesn't know what a burner phone is, even though he learned everything he knows about criminal justice from crime dramas, and they definitely call them burner phones. Although he might have stopped watching, crime dramas in the 80s, as he did with everything else, like Maturing, for instance. A Trump spokeswoman said that Trump had nothing to do with the records and assumed any and all of his phone calls were recorded and preserved. And in many cases, they probably were, which is why he went and got burner phones so that they wouldn't be. In a recent court filing, well, he didn't go and get them. I'm sure Rudy provided them. In a recent court filing, the January 6th committee asserted it has, quote, "a good faith basis for concluding that the president and members of his campaign engaged in a criminal conspiracy," and took notes, "to defraud the United States and obstruct the counting of electoral votes by Congress." And by the way, there's some news on that front from another facet of the investigation, which we can discuss later. You probably already know that one. And this is the more thrilling of the two for the moment. A federal judge said in a ruling, here we go. Sometimes I should just keep reading and all will be answered because some reporters are pretty thorough. A federal judge said in a ruling on Monday, yesterday, that Trump, quote, "more likely than not," unquote, "committed a federal crime in trying to obstruct the congressional count of electoral college votes on January 6th. The ruling was regarding emails that conservative lawyer, quote unquote lawyer, John Eastman, a Trump ally, had resisted turning over to the January 6th committee. And just quickly, extra comment on that. That case won't, you can't take that to the bank and say, boom, crime, done. A judge said you committed a crime. It wasn't, the only thing the judge was ruling on was whether or not the claims of privilege that Eastman was making, that he thought might help prevent him from having to, or being ordered by the courts to turn over his various documents, executive privilege on the part of the president, attorney-client privilege as between him and the president. For the most part, all defeated, though there were a few documents that I guess it might still apply to because it wasn't the totality of the collection. But, the judge actually went kind of out of his way to say, the crime fraud exception actually does apply here. There were a million other exceptions he could have applied, but he made clear that crime fraud probably does apply here because it looks like the record establishes the high probability that the crime was in fact committed. But it was just one of several reasons why these documents weren't privileged. But it's not a conviction itself. Anyway, of course, a Trump spokesman called the ruling absurd and baseless, but there it is. A federal judge has said so. They will appeal. The appeals court likely will. I don't know. I'm not sure where they'll be appealing, but if it's at the D.C. Circuit, I think he's still pretty sunk. And then the question is, can he convince somehow 5 members of the Supreme Court to reverse the lower court? Not based on law and fact, he can't. And so far, he's just had no luck collecting the 5 justices that he needs to just throw everything out the window and say, to hell with it, we're protecting Trump and nothing else. So the odds aren't good. 5 pages in the White House, 5 of the pages in the White House records obtained by the House committee are titled The Daily Diary of President Donald J. Trump, in all caps, and details some of Trump's phone calls and movements on January 6th. The remaining 6 pages are titled Presidential Call Log and have information provided by the White House switchboard and aides, including phone numbers and notes on the time and duration of some calls. But not all. Those records were given to the committee by the National Archives earlier this year after the Supreme Court, remember them, rejected Trump's request for the court to block the committee from obtaining the White House documents from January 6th. And I believe in that case, weirdly, Clarence Thomas was like the only one out there saying, no, because not even reasons. Because I don't like it, you can't have the records. Well, they do have the records. The Presidential Records Act requires preservation of memos, letters, notes, emails, faxes, and other written communications related to a president's official duties. That's why the National Archives had them. We'll return to this thrilling story in 2 exciting minutes. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, the same guy who was just talking to you a second ago. Our Patreon subscription drive is still going strong, with over 175 monthly donors who help keep us on the air. If we've helped keep you going during the pandemic, why not return the favor and help us keep going so we can all be together for the next disaster? Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it easy to make secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for keeping you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you. All right, welcome back now to Kagro in the Morning Show, real crime drama here on Netroots Radio. Let's jump back in. Although, how am I doing in my progress? I better speed things up a little bit. Anyway, you probably read ahead on me in the 2 minutes because you couldn't wait. The Presidential Records Act, we are reminded, requires preservation of memos, letters, notes, emails, faxes, and other written communications related to a president's official duties. And by the way, Trump still laughs at the word duties. I just wanted to let you know that. The National Archives website states the presidential diary should be a chronological record of the president's movements, phone calls, trips, and meetings. Trips and falls down the stairs as well. In January, the Post first reported that some of the Trump White House records turned over to the committee were potentially incomplete, including records that had been ripped up and taped back together. We know about that as well. Some of them flushed down the toilet, some of them eaten and swallowed. The New York Times first reported in February on the committee's discovery of gaps in the White House phone logs in February. From January 6th, of course, but it did not specify when or for how long on that day. CNN first reported that several hours in Trump's records provided to the committee lacked any notation of phone calls. At this point, I want to note for the record that our good friend from days of yore at Daily Kos, Georgia Logothetis, said that she had tweeted out this morning, oops, where's my, I remember, my pocket is gone because I clicked on a Washington Post link, and that sort of undoes the pocket thing. But But she was tweeting around a screenshot or two from Rolling Stone, which you may recall, Greg and I were mentioning it's one of the few publications we don't have subscriptions to, as between the two of us. But this screen grab was of Hunter Walker's piece of November 23rd, 2021. No, I don't want any updates from Rolling Stone at the moment. Thank you. November 23rd, 2021. January 6th organizers used anonymous burner phones to communicate with White House and Trump family, sources say. A key planner of the January 6th rally near the White House insisted the burner phones be purchased with cash, a source says. And I said, that rings a bell. A cowbell. I got to have more cowbell. I'm going to connect it to the fact that it's in Rolling Stone. It's musical reference. Anyway, music history, really, honestly. But those of you who recognize the quote know that it's not. It's spoof history. But yeah, that was reported. And no credit whatsoever, as I've seen so far, anyway, for Rolling Stone's reporting. So good job, Hunter Walker, who's probably standing around going, yeah, hello, duh. But, it's not about individual glory. It's about convicting Trump and, being rid of him forever, let's say. Some of the organizers, I'm going to skip over to Rolling Stone. Some of the organizers who planned the rally that took place on the White House ellipse on January 6th allegedly used difficult to trace burner phones for their most, quote, high level communications with former President Trump's team. Kylie Kramer, Kremer, I believe maybe we've called that name, a top official in the March for Trump group that helped plan the ellipse rally, directed an aide to pick up 3 burner phones days before January 6th, according to 3 sources who were involved in the event. One of the sources, a member of the March for Trump team, says Kramer insisted the phones be purchased using cash and described this as being, quote, of the utmost importance, which honestly is, bad news for them. I mean, it's usable evidence of conscious knowledge that, one, you were engaging in behavior that was designed to make it impossible or difficult to actually track your actual behavior, because if anyone actually was able to track it, they would be able to prove criminal activity. And the fact that you seek these out is admissible evidence of criminal intent, though it isn't proof by itself. All it proves is that in the age of every transaction being done electronically, that you did it with cash, I think entitles the jury to draw some conclusions about how you wanted that to be untraceable. The fact that you went out, there are uses for these phones. It's not that they should just arrest everybody who buys track phones or whatever. But, and if you're organizing an event, just to do some devil's advocate work here, if you were organizing an event like that, you could go one of 2 ways. Walkie-talkies is one way, or cheaper, you buy, disposable cell phones, not because they're burner phones and you don't want any records kept, but because you want to issue one to people. You don't want to give them these days an iPhone, giving people $1,000 phone doesn't make any sense. I don't know how much a track phone costs, but it's less. And you give it to them for the day, and it's basically used, as like it was a walkie-talkie. You can talk and text, and everybody gets one, and you can hand out the numbers to everybody at the meeting at the beginning of the day and program them in with each other. And that way, everybody's got a working phone, and you don't have problems like, if you just rely on everybody's phone and you have no reason to hide the records, one idiot doesn't charge his phone, and the whole thing goes to hell. Actually, it happened apparently the other day at the Oscars. I just saw some tweet. Yes, this is of no importance, and so I won't hunt it down and give it to Scott. But apparently, when they were trying to decide what the hell to do about the slapping going on at the Oscars, I guess the people who produced the show, they're right there in the room, but they're dithering about what to do. They can't get together and decide what to do or whether to do anything at all. And it was because they weren't able to get in. They were at far-flung corners of the theater and couldn't communicate with one another. Why they couldn't communicate with their phones or texting or whatever, I have no idea. But apparently that prevented them from getting anything done. It's like no one wants to work anymore. I thought everybody being back in the office together was supposed to make these things better. But as it turns out, they would have had better luck on a Zoom call. Anyway, here in this Rolling Stone article, what you have is, at best, I suppose, you could say, well, we were just giving out a communication device to everybody that was easily usable, was reliable. We knew it would be charged. We could hand out the numbers. Nobody has to give up their personal number. We could pay for the whole thing. We don't have to pay anybody's, phone bills or anything, and reimbursements and yada yada. It's just standard practice for event organization and advance work, as they call it. So, you could get out of it that way. The insistence that they be paid for in cash, difficult to duck. That one doesn't make nearly as much sense. Really no reason why that would be. In fact, it would be preferable for a legitimate organization not to pay for them in cash for a number of reasons. So that one is a bit of a sticky wicket, as you might say if you knew what the hell wickets were. The three sources say Kylie Kramer took one of the phones and used it to communicate with top White House and Trump campaign officials, including Eric Trump. I don't know what he's the top of. The president's second oldest son, who leads the family's real estate business, who is exactly who you want to talk to during a coup. Or, maybe this is evidence for the defense, right? If I was planning a coup and the overthrow of the United States government and Constitution, would I be talking to Eric Trump about anything? You got a good point there. That's actually a pretty good defense. Lara Trump, unfortunately for Eric, I would say, Lara Trump I would be planning things with. That's Eric's wife. And former senior Trump campaign consultant. That's why she's important, not because she's married to the schlump over here. Mark Meadows, the former White House chief of staff, he's still important in this, even though he is illegally registered to vote in North Carolina. And Katrina Pearson, the idiot with the bullet necklace, still around, this idiot we can't get rid of, a Trump surrogate and campaign consultant. The member says a second phone, I guess the member of the team, of the March for Trump team, said the second phone was given to Amy Kramer, Kylie Kramer's mother, and another key rally organizer, which, whatever. Could do an hour about that. But the team member says they did not know who the third phone was purchased for. It's a big mystery. Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, Donald J. Trump Jr., maybe, I don't know. That was when the planning for the event on the Ellipse was happening. She needed burner phones in order to communicate with high-level people, is how she put it. The March for Trump team member tells Rolling Stone, referencing Kylie Kramer, so she knew what to say to not get in trouble, but the cash thing, still unexplained. Kylie and Amy Kramer did not immediately respond to a request for comment on the record because their phones ran out of credits, I guess. According to the three sources, some of the most crucial planning conversations between top rally organizers and Trump's inner circle took place on those burner phones. They were planning all kinds of stuff, marches and rallies. Any conversation she had with the White House or Trump family took place on those phones, team members say of Kylie Kramer. And that too, evidence of, but not necessarily proof of, knowledge probably on the part of various actors inside the White House and the campaign that these were phones used for the purpose of taking care of all the illegal business. In other words, programming in those phone numbers into their phones or recognizing them, tagging them when they get calls from those phones so that they know to take those calls from that number without putting in, the name and so-and-so. This is Kylie calling about crime. And, right. So, but at any rate, I think it tends to show that there's knowledge that burner phones have been, temporary phones have been issued, and these are the numbers, and the fact that they took those calls would be very meaningful. Burner phones, as they explain here in Rolling Stone, in case you don't know, like you're Donald Trump saying, I don't know what they are, never heard the term. They are cheap prepaid cells designed for temporary usage, and they do not require users to have an account. That's what makes them hard to trace, and ideal for those who are seeking anonymity, particularly if they are purchased with cash. There's a link, actually, to a life hacker article, I guess, about what makes them so untraceable if they're purchased with cash. But I mean, I think we can all figure that out, right? There's no credit card record. The use of burner phones could make it more difficult for congressional investigators to find evidence of coordination between Trump's team and rally planners, but probably not that much worse. The House Select Committee on the January 6th attack has been examining what role Trump and his allies played in what the committee described as efforts to subvert the rule of law, overturn the results of the November 3rd, 2020 election, or otherwise impede the peaceful transfer of power. As part of that effort, the committee has subpoenaed documents from the Kremers. I don't know how they pronounce that name, but Kremers. Kramer, I don't know. Other March for Trump organizers, rally planners, and top Trump advisors, including members of his White House staff and campaign team. And that's what eventually led them, by the way, to Ginny Thomas. But that's not all necessarily explained in here. All right. There might be more that you can mine out of this Rolling Stone piece. But I think at this point I want to jump back to the Washington Post with the latest news. I just wanted to establish for you, as Georgia did with her keen eyesight and great tweet. I would love to have retweeted it, but she's got her tweets locked and protected these days, so no dice on that. But at any rate, good eye there. We should have been talking about this for a long time already, but I don't know. Now it's in the Washington Post instead of Rolling Stone, so we talk about it again. I don't mind talking about it again. Where did we leave off? Let's see. Right. CNN had first reported that several hours of Trump's records provided to the committee lacked any notation of phone calls. The documents obtained by the January 6th committee, back in Washington Post now, show Trump having several previously unreported exchanges on January 6th, including brief calls with Bannon and personal lawyer Rudy Giuliani that morning, before Trump had a final call with Pence, in which the vice president told him, go to hell, or whatever version of it. He wasn't going to do this thing that he was being asked to do. The call to the vice president was part of Trump's attempt to put in motion a plan advocated by Bannon and outlined in the memo written by Eastman, that would enable Trump to hold on to the presidency. Not really. He thought so, though. As first reported in the book Peril, which is their book, which is why it's being prominently featured. Here are some call logs, I guess, from later in the day with the numbers redacted, and all the people that you don't want him talking to at this point are exactly who's on the phone. All right. According to White House records, Bannon and Trump spoke at 8:37 in the morning on January 6th. Trump spoke with Rudy at 8:45. 8:56, he asked the White House switchboard to return a call from Mark Meadows. 9:02, Trump asked the operator to call Pence. The operator informed him that a message was left for the vice president. Bannon's first January 6th call with Trump lasted for about 1 minute. Excuse me, I ate a breakfast burrito. I'll call you back. During that conversation, Bannon, he actually did something. He asked Trump whether Pence was coming over for a breakfast meeting. According to two people familiar with the exchange, Bannon hoped Trump could pressure the vice president over breakfast or hit him with a baseball bat and say, team, and get him to agree to thwart the congressional certification of Biden's victory. But Trump told Bannon Pence was not scheduled to come over. Following a heated Trump-Pence meeting the previous evening, January 5th, in the Oval Office, Bannon quickly pressed Trump that he needed to call Pence again and tell him to hold off on doing anything that would enable certification. Trump agreed, but, was powerless to actually do anything. According to the White House phone logs, Bannon and Trump spoke again late on January 6th in a call that began at 10:19 p.m. and ended at 10:26 p.m. when Trump probably farted.
We found a way in other states, ladies.
Excuse me. All right. Bannon, a central player in a group of Trump allies who met at the Willard Hotel near the White House on January 5th to discuss their strategy for January 6th, was indicted last year by the Justice Department for refusing to cooperate with the House committee, which is seeking more documents and testimony about his conversations with Trump. Trump's final call with Pence is not listed on the call log, even though multiple people close to both men said the call occurred sometime in the late morning before Trump headed to the Save America rally on the Ellipse. During their conversation, Pence told Trump, when I go to the Capitol, I'll do my job and not block Biden's certification, enraging Trump, according to Peril. Trump said, Mike, you can do this. I'm counting on you to do it. If you don't do it, I picked the wrong man 4 years ago. Well, you always pick the wrong man because you're an idiot. Anyway, he added that, and according to the book, which we wrote, like, they're pretending like they didn't write the thing, you're going to wimp out. Yeah, well, Pence later released a letter saying he did not, as vice president, have unilateral authority to decide presidential contests, and said he would keep the oath he made when he was sworn into office. The White House logs also show that Trump had conversations on January 6th with election lawyers, more or less, and White House officials, as well as outside allies, such as then-Senator David Perdue, who he rallied with just the other day, conservative commentator William J. Bennett, the gambling hound, and Fox News host Sean Hannity, who we should be holding accountable, let's say. Bennett, Hannity, and Perdue did not respond to requests for comment. According to the documents, Trump spoke with other confidants and political advisors that morning ahead of the rally. At 8:34 a.m., he spoke with Kurt Olson, who was advising Trump on legal challenges to the election that he was losing everywhere. Trump then placed calls to Senators Mitch McConnell, and Josh Hawley, but it's unclear whether he reached them. McConnell aide said Monday McConnell declined Trump's call. Hawley, a Trump ally, was the first senator to declare he would object to the certification on first, a decision that sparked other GOP senators to say they too would object. We heard all about Cruz and his involvement in that yesterday. That bears more discussion, but we probably won't get to it. Maybe Joan wants to talk about it. I don't know. The records show that Trump had a 10-minute call starting at 9:24 with Jim Jordan. You know all about him. Jordan has declined to cooperate with the House committee. The 10-minute call Trump had with him was first reported by CNN. Giuliani and Trump spoke on January 6th at 9:41 for 6 minutes and at 8:39 for 9 minutes, according to the White House logs. According to the documents, Giuliani called from a different phone each time, different phone numbers. It's not interesting. Giuliani, no response to requests for comment because he couldn't find another phone to use. Stephen Miller appears in here. He told Fox News in December that an alternate slate of electors in the contested states is going to vote. Spoke with Trump for 26 minutes on the morning of January 6th. The records show that call started at 9:52 and ended at 10:18. No response to requests for comment from him. 11:17, the last thing listed there on the phone logs anyway for the next couple hours. The White House diary states the president talked on a phone call to an unidentified person. Vladimir Putin? I don't know. Who knows? That vague call listing with no notes or duration is the last official record of a phone conversation that Trump had until the evening of January 6th. The records of Trump's activity throughout the day are very limited. The diary notes that he addressed supporters at the rally, at the Ellipse on midday, went back to the White House at 1:19 and met with his valet. The records note of Trump's activity on 1:21 p.m. on January 6th. Very important. And, get this toilet paper off my shoe. Trump's supporters breached the Capitol shortly after 2 p.m. The next documented event in the president's diary comes at 4:03. Nothing doing officially. Again, remember, no indication of any extra security precautions whatsoever. In the middle of an insurrection, a mile away at the Capitol, the president is, happily whistling through his day and watching TV and eating 2 or 3 lunches. And Secret Service is insisting on no additional protection. But not only that, there's no activity whatsoever. I'm just, napping on the couch and eating cheeseburgers, which is impeachable all by itself. Unless you can't get 2/3 to admit that he should have been doing something, which happens to be the case. The next documented event, 4:03, when the president goes to the Rose Garden to record for 4 minutes a video message for the pro-Trump mob that had stormed the Capitol. It was posted to Twitter at 4:17, and that, you remember that one. They quote him, "We love you, you're very special." The president goes back to the Oval Office 7 minutes later. Next listed action, though, 6:27, he goes to bed. He's up to the second floor residence to watch TV there. According to the logs, Trump made his first phone call in more than 7 hours at 6:54 p.m. when he instructed the operator to call Dan Scavino Jr., which I guess is what he is anyway. 7:01, Trump spoke with Pat Cipollone, White House counsel, for 6 minutes. Later spoke to Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany. 9:23, he's on the phone with Jason Miller, talking about how many strippers he made pregnant for 18 minutes.
Miller, that's all it took for, he's got like 6 extra strippers in that time. Miller has engaged with the committee and sat for depositions and a lap dance, parts of which were excerpted in the committee's filing alleging a criminal conspiracy was advanced by Trump and his allies. Scavino couldn't be reached for comment. Cipollone and McEnany didn't respond. Nobody's going to respond to comments. Come on. Anyway, that night, Trump also spoke with lawyers supporting his election fight, such as former North Carolina Supreme Court Chief Justice Mark Martin and Cleta Mitchell. She was on that phone call with Brett Raffensperger, right? A veteran conservative Washington attorney who worked closely with Trump on contesting Biden's victory in Georgia, according to the records. Final call listed is 11:23, 17 minutes with John McEntee, the director of presidential personnel. And I think he was a bit of a dirty bird himself, as we learned during the administration. Earlier this year, the Supreme Court, in an unsigned order, rejected Trump's request to block the release of some White House records which have been stored by the National Archives to the committee. Supreme Court's order in January included dissent from Justice Clarence Thomas. Last week, this is very thorough, good news, the Post and CBS News reported the committee has obtained 29 text messages from the post-election period between Meadows and Ginny Thomas, Justice Thomas's wife and longtime conservative activist. The messages, which do not directly reference Justice Thomas or the Supreme Court, show how Ginny Thomas used her access to Trump's inner circle to promote and seek to guide the president's strategy to overturn the election results, and how receptive and grateful Meadows said he was to receive her advice. Justice Thomas and Ginny Thomas have not responded to multiple requests for comment. Look, they should just put a blanket statement to save space in the articles. None of the Republicans that appear to be guilty in all of this responded to requests for comment. They're not going to. They're never going to. So leave that. Let's just all assume that at the beginning. She has long maintained there's no conflict of interest between her activism and her husband's work, but she's wrong about that and should go to jail for it. Thank you. All right. They don't say that. I do. That's my own addition. Yeah, sure. Whatever. Ginny Thomas was, of course, trying to convince the White House that the fix was in and that her husband would be able to shepherd through all of their law-breaking, except he was actually out there on a limb all alone, weirdly enough. And not enough discussion. There's not enough room in this article, and they covered it adequately, I'm sure, yesterday and over the weekend, just how crazy Ginny Thomas's theories of all these things were. She was essentially in Sidney Powell land. She was completely out of her mind. She even texted, I didn't get to mention this yesterday, but I tweeted about it over the weekend when I saw it. She actually tweeted the phrase, "release the Kraken," to Mark Meadows. That's where she was coming from. And Meadows, maybe he's just humoring her. Oh, thank you very much for your brilliant insight. I don't know, but he seemed to be into it too. And, he's texting other people, we got to look into this Italian satellite thing. All right, so, they're all bonkers. All of them. They are all vermin supreme level crazy. And we're running around pretending they're real officials. And I'm sick to death of it. It's amazing. We have to tiptoe around. These guys should get the net. Throw them all in a mental hospital. That's where they belong. And that would be lenient treatment, because honestly, if you insist on treating them as serious people and we finally get to the bottom of all this nonsense, then you're going to have to lock them up and you're going to have to hang a couple of them because it's treason. Just admit it. But we have to play this weird game instead. I'm offering you a way out. The 25th Amendment was the way out. Just declaring him bonkers. That could have erased the whole thing. Sorry, he's just not competent to stand trial. But, they wanted to hold out and pretend he was a rock-solid human being. And I don't know. Now you should have to pay the price for it. All right, next break is coming up. And there's still a lot to discuss from this morning's reporting of things. But, man, I don't know. How much longer can we go on with this before I might leave and start a riot before Joan gets here. All right. At any rate, let's see. Is there anything else that we need to squeeze in or could squeeze in before the break? I got to acknowledge this. The Wall Street Journal reporting yesterday, semi-completely separate. I don't know. Everything's connected now. This rather startling news, is Wall Street Journal going to let us see it, or are they going to paywall it? Yeah, they'll paywall it. Does Pocket let us read more of it? No, they're very good about their paywalls. The news is Roman Abramovich, the oligarch, and Ukrainian peace negotiators suffer suspected poisoning. That seems kind of weird. Abramovich, of course, has had reason. I guess he's one of the guys hiding out. I don't know what they call it, but he's landed in Londongrad, owner of Chelsea football club there, and being forced to sell it. And I don't know. He seems to be like contrite about the whole thing and trying to salvage his reputation in the West. So I guess maybe he embarked on some sort of peace negotiations with Ukrainians. I don't know what he thought he could engineer, or maybe he thought he was being authorized to do so. That's a possibility. But maybe Putin, unhappy with the way he was trying to salvage his own reputation at the cost of Putin's reputation. Not that that was salvageable. But I need you to do peace negotiations. But it's going to be one of those peace negotiations like we tried to do with Trump, where the demand is, well, give up Donbass and eastern Ukraine and Crimea, and it will stop attacking you. That, not really much of a peace offering, but he might have convinced Abramovich that he was still a trusted aide at that point, and he wanted him to do it, but he had no intention of negotiating a peace agreement. It was just to get everybody back in the same room and poison them again. The Russian oligarch developed symptoms that people familiar with the matter blamed on hardliners in Moscow who say they want to sabotage peace talks. I have my own theory about that. And, scary. I mean, I don't know what the deal is. They didn't poison them enough, I guess. Apparently, all they got out of it was suffering symptoms like red eyes, constant and painful tearing, and peeling skin on their faces and hands. The people familiar with this said Abramovich had shuttled between Moscow, Belarus, and other negotiating venues since Russia invaded Ukraine, probably thinking he was a trusted ally. But, he's a smart guy. Probably also thinking, this could be a big double cross, too. So watch out for poisoning. And whether or not he got it, well, we'll find out reading the history books one day. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show. The mute button working this time. Yes, good call here from Mars Farmer 75 over Twitter, listening to the show and shouting out Obama phones. That's the burner. So they finally found him. He's absolutely right. At last, found the Obama phones that something, and it was going to turn us all into socialists somehow, but instead it just turned them into traitors. And hey, what are you going to do about it? All right, let's see. What am I looking at here? I'm just looking at Eric Bollert retweeting Matt Negrin complaining about something in the CBS News a lot in the CBS News coverage, apparently. Though the tweet I just saw was, for some reason, even CBS's press release didn't mention it. Mick Mulvaney, worked for Trump. I guess they were asking him for comment about the situation, and he was doing cover-up work, but they never actually mentioned, Mick Mulvaney, by the way, is motivated to do cover-up work for Trump. He worked for Trump. He was the chief of staff, acting chief of staff for a while. That's kind of weird. What's the beginning of this? Wow, this is an enormous thread complaining about, Well, it's, let's take a look here. Up at the top, an hour ago, he began, CBS News is hiring Trump officials and falsely identifying them as journalists. Oh, my. Former OMB Director Mick Mulvaney, who joins CBS News as a contributor, breaks down President Biden's tax plans on wealthy Americans. There we go. That's what's going on. It has nothing to do with this situation. Just as CBS News is collecting plaudits for breaking the news on the gap in the phone records, they are at the same time announcing the hiring of Mick Mulvaney as a news contributor without mentioning that, I guess we're all supposed to remember. And to some extent, I would hope you all do. We all do. But the rest of America, do they? And then they hire him to analyze the Biden budget. And it's like, this is the team that says he's not legitimately president. What kind of analysis do you think you're going to get of the budget? And I understand he's a former OMB director. And believe me, I mean, the whole Trump operation is about dressing people up with the laurels that they think that they earned by virtue of having somehow engineered a win in the Electoral College in 2016. And ordinarily this works. It's a real thing. But again, when you're talking about vermin supreme, you can't just say, yeah, well, he was OMB director. Well, OMB director for a crazy-ass lunatic criminal president who didn't know a goddamn thing about anything, and neither does this guy. But we hired him because, he occupied the office of OMB director. Now, I understand that ordinarily you would do that, right? But there are previous Republican administrations and people who worked in the OMB, before who could do it. Why not, I get, the reason why not the Obama OMB director is because, well, that doesn't, people won't trust an Obama administration OMB's analysis of the Biden administration's budget. Why? Because, blah, 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 both sides got to have a bipartisan approach. You could go and get George W. Bush's OMB director to do it, but I don't know. It's weird. And of course, yes, mighty OCD back with another. You got another Twitter handle going? Did they kick you out once again? But saying, yeah, didn't Mulvaney have like 8 acting jobs at once? He did, as a matter of fact. Anyway, certainly very true. Let's see. Anyway, that's a whole other can o' worms. And if you like worms, you're really in luck today. I'll mark that one, and let's take a look at what else he's complaining about, because he goes on at some length, so there's even more about this. You're the guy to ask about this, a news network that has fully abandoned the pretense that it is objective. I guess that was part of, he includes the video of his segment being, on TV discussing the whole thing. It looks like he's in a hotel room somewhere, by the way. Key West, Florida. Yeah, I guess he is. I don't know. The decor. I don't know if that's supposed to be his house, in which case he needs a new decorator. People score the room, Zoom room score on him. He's looks like a hotel. Anyway, but that's what they say to him. You're the guy to ask about this. You're not the guy to ask about this. That's Matt Negrin's point here. CBS News refuses to book Democrats on its Sunday shows, of course. But now they fill the rest of the week with Republican officials as well. CBS News instructed its journalists on January 6th not to say it was a coup or insurrection, but instead to mention all the, quote, peaceful protesters. That's an interesting note. And he attaches here the tweet of Max Tani, T-A-N-I, White House reporter for CBS. CBS News internal guidance also advised. Is he a CBS reporter? I don't know. No. Sorry, Politico reporter. Reporting on the CBS News internal guidance, also advising staff to avoid coup or insurrection label. Just this is offered then by way of proof of Matt's assertion here. We don't need to go out of our way to give this an overly dramatic label. This story doesn't need that. We should not be calling this an attempted coup or terrorist attack, according to their internal guidance. CBS News, Matt goes on to say, endorsed the big lie and told millions of people who watch Face the Nation that Donald Trump won the 2020 election. Ew. And there's a litany of complaints here, as a matter of fact, and all of them important, but not all of them necessarily relevant to what's happening this morning, except the Mick Mulvaney part, which will, I'm sure, come up in our discussion of the budget, if we discuss the budget later on with Joan. All right, let's see. Other things that require briefing and discussion before we shift topics. What else is there? The CNN reporting of the January 6th happenings includes this piece from, also early this morning, and I saw Greg sharing this one. I don't want to, I thought about leaving it for tomorrow because I'm sure Greg will want to round it up too, but why don't we at least run through it. Trump's January 6th plot appears darker and more dangerous by the day. Can you believe it? This is analysis offered by Stephen Collinson of CNN and updated just this morning. Let's see what he has to say, just to add some more color to what we're learning this morning. Former President Donald Trump's attempt to steal the 2020 election, that's good wording, is being revealed week by week to be deeper and broader than it initially appeared, sharpening the national dilemma of if and how he could ever be held to account. Mustang. Even as a federal judge commented Monday that Trump, quote, more likely than not, sought to commit a crime to stay in office that last year. And that reminds me, that's where we ought to go, is probably some coverage of that ruling. The ex-president's attacks on democracy are intensifying. They were on display as recently as Saturday night in a lie-filled rally, well done, that underscored how his conspiracy to overturn the election, whether it is criminal or not, it is, remains viscerally alive and able to damage future elections, but with a smaller crowd. While much of the country has been transfixed by Russia's brutal war in Ukraine, yes, true, the House committee investigating the insurrection has been racing against the clock, I don't know about racing, ticking down to its own likely demise if Republicans win back the House in November's midterms. It took another step on Monday toward holding two former Trump advisors to account by advancing criminal contempt referrals. On Tuesday, the Washington Post and CBS News reported that a gap of more than 7 hours exists in the logs of phone calls placed to or from Trump on January 6th that were turned over to the White House or to the House committee. CNN had previously reported that the records were missing regarding the calls. It's extraordinary that more than 14 months on, new details of efforts by Trump and those around him to subvert President Joe Biden's victory are still emerging, even though some of them emerged in November. It is also ironic that this threat to American democracy is being further exposed while Washington leads an international effort to save freedom in Ukraine, which is under much greater assault from Russian President Vladimir Putin, whom Trump still seems to hero worship. It's a weird application of the term, but okay. It's accurate, but whatever. Here at home, a flurry of new details in recent days about the ex-president's behavior justifies continued investigations into the worst attack on American democracy in decades. Those revelations also explain why Trump Republicans were so keen to prevent the House Select Committee investigating January 6th from ever getting off the ground. And they inject a new political dimension into Trump's attempted comeback as he casts the 2022 midterm elections as a referendum on the lie that he won in 2020 and seeks to build a return to the White House on the same falsehoods that have drawn in millions of his supporters. In one development on Monday that alone encapsulated the stunning events of the last election still hanging over the country, a federal judge wrote that it was more likely than not that Trump corruptly attempted to obstruct Congress in its certification of Biden's election victory. Judge David Carter's comments came as he ruled that emails from John Eastman, you know who he is, should be handed over to the committee. Carter can't initiate a case against Trump, but his words didn't just raise a blaring historical marker over a president committing a potential crime in office, and one that put the entire U.S. democratic system at risk. His comment refocused attention on the debate within the House committee on whether to make what would be a historic criminal referral of Trump to the Justice Department, for whatever good that might do. Such a move would present Attorney General Merrick Garland with the earth-shaking decision of whether to prosecute an ex-president who is maneuvering with a $100 million war chest in a potential bid to reclaim his job in 2024. There could be fewer, hotter political potatoes for an attorney general. It's a potato, is it? Already facing political pressure to deal with Trump aides who are obstructing the committee. Failing to pursue Trump in such circumstances would send a signal of impunity for presidents who seek to destroy American democratic institutions. That would suck, huh? Even as Trump's supporters who ransacked the U.S. Capitol begin to be convicted and face prison terms for apparently acting on their political hero's wishes. But moving against Trump would ensure that the dark history of the 2020 election continues to dominate American politics for years to come, because it would offer the ex-president new material for his claims that he's persecuted by the political establishment. Tapping into that theme on Monday, Trump spokesman Taylor Budowich slammed Carter's ruling as, quote, just another example of how the left is weaponizing every branch of government against President Trump. But the panel hit back. The court's opinion also includes a warning that a failure to pursue accountability could set the stage for a repeat of January 6th. Committee Chairman Benny Thompson a Mississippi Democrat, and Vice Chair Liz Cheney, a Wyoming Republican, said in a statement on Monday, America must not allow what happened on that day to be minimized and cannot accept as normal these threats to our democracy, they said, clearly trying to emphasize the enduring relevance of the Capitol riot as the political clock races on. Monday's development rocked Washington as it was still coming to terms with the implications of last week's revelations that Ginny Thomas had aggressively tried to support Trump's attempts to cling to power in late 2020 and early 21. There's no indication her husband was involved in attempts to subvert a legal election, except that he's still in the hospital. But the reputation of the Supreme Court relies on the assumption of impartiality and avoiding any appearance of ethical issues. That issue has now dragged the top bench directly into the aftermath on January 6th, an outrage that is tainting every branch of the American government because they tried to overthrow all of them, you see. And it came as Republican senators spent last week smearing Biden's Supreme Court pick, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, with misleading claims that she was soft on child pornography offenders, which could damage her reputation among some voters for years to come. Ironically, many of those same senators were among Trump's most fervent enablers and apologists when he tore at the rule of law in the White House. Multiple sources said Monday that the committee will seek an interview with Ginny Thomas, big deal, over texts in its possession. You know about them. We want to hear from everybody who has something to say, although she won't want to say anything, Jamie Raskin says. And she obviously interacted frequently with the president's chief of staff and was actively involved with the effort to overturn the election. So speaking as one member, I think it's important we hear from her. I mean, there's a point to it, I guess. I mean, she wouldn't shut up when it came to trying to collude with White House officials to overthrow the government. But now that the government has questions about it that could land her in trouble, now she's falling silent. Carter delivered a fresh victory for the January 6th committee, which signaled on Monday it's moving ahead with its investigation in ordering the handover of 101 emails held by Eastman from around January 6th. The judge revealed new details about the documents the House panel can receive, including one that appears to be aiding Trump and Eastman's alleged conspiracy to obstruct Congress, a draft memo written for another Trump attorney, Rudy Giuliani, recommending that the vice president, Mike Pence, reject some states' electors during the January 6th congressional meeting. Eastman was instrumental in crafting the plan for Pence to refuse to certify the election results in Congress based on false claims disproven in court that there had been massive fraud against Trump. Eastman intends to comply with the court's order, his attorney Charles Burnham said, but that's what you would say whether you were planning on complying or not, quite honestly. But the Eastman angle is only one front on which the committee is pushing ahead. The ex-president's son-in-law and senior White House advisor Jared Kushner is expected to voluntarily speak to the committee this week. Friends say he's privately appalled, I guess. And the committee voted Monday night to send the full House a referral for criminal contempt regarding Trump advisors Peter Navarro and Dan Scavino, both of whom rebuffed the panel. Assuming the full House supports the referral, it will again be up to Garland to decide whether to move toward prosecutions. While the Justice Department did open a case against former political guru Steve Bannon, who goes to trial in the summer, it has yet to weigh in on a similar contempt case against Meadows, who may have a far stronger executive privilege ground for refusing to testify, even if he was illegally registered to vote in North Carolina. Garland's challenge shows that while the committee can make big symbolic moves, its capacity to force testimony may be limited ahead of its expected public hearings later this spring. Some Democrats on the committee called on the Justice Department to do more to hold these Trump aides who refused to testify to account through prosecution. Representative Zoe Lofgren of California warned this committee is doing its job. The Department of Justice needs to do theirs. Elaine Luria of Virginia called on the department to act swiftly and showed real frustration with Garland. I will echo what my colleagues have already said, but more bluntly, Attorney General Garland, do your job so that we can do ours. Such frustrations raise the question of the committee's broader impact. Millions of Americans who support the ex-president have already shown themselves willing to buy into denials of what happened on January 6th, which have been advanced by Trump's GOP acolytes. But even though the committee, which has interviewed hundreds of witnesses and appeared to have a stark story to tell, cannot itself bring Trump to justice. It can influence public opinion with its final report, and public hearings. If it succeeds in capturing the attention of the American people, it will implicitly ask voters whether they have the stomach for more years of lies from an ex-president who clearly lost an election that he insists he won. And good reminder that that's all they can do, is just suggest that someone be prosecuted or suggest that we not vote for these clowns again. And that may be it. And that's kind of bad. Anyway, let's see. What other things do we want to read about? We could probably skim back. For some reason, they're not parked in Pocket here. But if we look back, we can find some of the reporting, or perhaps the tweeting anyway, of the judge's ruling yesterday. Although, that too, I think there's not a whole lot more that we want to add to this now that we're able to, it was a great quote, but that was about it. And it's not enforceable in any way, but it's, likely to come up again. That's for sure. At any rate, let's see. In other news, I guess I should share with you the news that apparently there's another state legislator. The state legislature is just why we can't have nice things in this country. Another Republican state legislature, this time in Nebraska, a state senator, Bruce Bostelman. I just want to note for the record, the latest on the public record to fall for the furries want litter boxes in schools hoax, I guess. He stands there and makes a good minute and a half speech about how he can't believe it, but it's true, and he totally heard it. That I love how he explains what furries are. For those of you who don't know, he starts off like I've researched furries now, and I can tell you what they are. And he launches into saying they're school kids, young kids who dress up in cat and dog costumes and go to school and meow and bark and pretend to be animals. Nah, that's not what they are, but that's what they are for purposes of your stupid story, I guess. But anyway, he repeats the same stupid nonsense of, kids are dressing up as cats and dogs and insisting on identifying as cats and dogs, and that they want litter boxes in the bathrooms, and schools are doing it. In fact, one school didn't do it fast enough, and I totally heard that one of the kids just defecated on the floor in protest. Well, this is where the litter box should be, damn it. I don't know. He just spins out this other story. I don't know. Maybe he read it online. I have a feeling he was just sort of embellishing as he was standing on his feet. By the way, then he pulled out this other one. And he says, I can't believe that we're doing this for these kids. And, meanwhile, there's other good patriotic kids who are getting kicked out of school because you tell them you can't wear an American flag on your T-shirt. Which, I don't know. Maybe that has a grain of truth somewhere. I mean, I imagine it could happen. That seems like a Rush Limbaugh type story or something. So this is an apocryphal story from somewhere in this guy's dark recesses of his memory that he once heard that a kid was kicked out of school for wearing an American flag T-shirt. But, it probably showed up with one of those like Team America T-shirts. It has an American flag on it, but then it says America, F yeah on it, but it spells out the whole word. They probably told him that's inappropriate. It's this kind of thing that morphs into, right? You can't wear a T-shirt with profanity on it, but it has an American flag. You're banning the American flag. You're an unpatriotic communist sympathizer or something. And it gets reported that way, and there's actual state legislators out there saying, I believe the furry story. I went out and, for those of you who don't know, I'll explain it, but if they actually looked it up, they would figure out, well, it's not about kids, it's about adults, and it's not that they are trying to pretend to be the animals, it's something else, but whatever. But he's so sure, and then he weaves in the story about the American flag T-shirts, and it's just incredible. And of course, maybe he couldn't get real information about what furries are because that information had been banned from the library by his latest legislation. But who knows? At any rate, he's a bad person and should be embarrassed about it. And you should all call him out on it. Let's see. I wanted to scroll back because, here we are. Oh, no. That was a different thing. All right. Well, at any rate, at some point there was more coverage in my retweets from people who were reviewing what had gone on in the case yesterday, but not immediately apparent, and so we'll leave it at that. I think we probably discussed that to death on Twitter yesterday. And anyway, it's been surpassed by other equally appalling accounts. Let's see. Of other things that we might wish to touch on here before Joan gets here, because it might be something she wants to discuss, let me at least put on the record the lengthy and thorough reporting being done, or having been done, at the New York Times. They haven't made an appearance on today's show yet, even though Armando reminds us that they suck. And they often do. But here, a good job, or a good point being made anyway, how Joe Manchin aided Cole. You could figure out how he aided Cole, and earned millions. This is a very interesting background piece, well reported, it seems to me. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, or Armando will prove me wrong later. But we all know that Joe Manchin today is a very wealthy individual and made a tremendous amount of money in coal and fossil fuels, and so it stands to reason that he'd be protecting his own personal position by remaining very pro-coal. And of course you're going to be pro-coal in West Virginia, even though very few people, relatively speaking, actually work in coal production in West Virginia. Used to be the case. Now it's part of the stereotype of what West Virginia is, and for some reason, Joe Manchin, who really should be interested in helping West Virginia develop and overcome that stereotype and say West Virginia is about so much more, and when you're aiding in the development of West Virginia, you're probably not really aiding in the development of coal as an industry, except the problem is that you are, because he personally profits from it, and that's what he wants to do. But the backstory, how did he get to be, this coal baron? Like, that's not really what it was in his background, and it wasn't the Manchin family. That sounds terrible. The Manchin family, but appropriate, not Manson, Manchin. They're not generations of coal barons. So it's important to figure out how that happened, and it's gross in a number of ways. It's dirty in a lot of ways too, not just the idea of him setting himself up for wealth by using his government positions, but the coal that he's using is particularly dirty as well. This is really something. So how Joe Manchin aided coal and earned millions. At every step of his political career, Joe Manchin helped a West Virginia power plant, a particular power plant, that is the sole customer of his private coal business. Along the way, of course, he blocked ambitious climate action, which really wasn't even necessary. Quite honestly, he could have been, there's a million things that he's blocked along the way on climate action that really wouldn't have stood in the way of his continuing to profiteer, rather than just profiteer from this relationship. Like, there's no reason why you can't develop wind and solar power and electric vehicles and still sell this crap coal to this stupid plant. What's the story here? Christopher Flavel and Julie Tate are the reporters. Dateline, Granttown, West Virginia. Kind of an appropriately named town. On a hilltop overlooking Pawpaw Creek, or Crick, I guess we could say, because it's West Virginia, 15 miles south of the Pennsylvania border, looms a fortress-like structure with a single smokestack, the only viable business in a dying Appalachian town. The Granttown Power Plant is also the link between the coal industry and the personal finances of Joe Manchin III, a Democrat who rose through state politics to reach the United States Senate, where, through the vagaries of electoral politics, he is now the single most important figure shaping the nation's energy and climate policy, and everything else as well, unfortunately. Mr. Manchin's ties to the Granttown plant date to 1987. Not exactly ancient times, right? When he had just been elected, curiously enough, to the West Virginia Senate, a part-time job with a base pay, by the way, Mr. Millionaire, of $6,500. His family's carpet business was struggling. Yeah, wealthy Joe Manchin with the houseboat, yacht, and millions of dollars and yada yada was getting $6,500 a year as a state senator and struggling in the carpet business. not a multimillionaire or a coal baron or anything like it. It's interesting, isn't it? Opportunity arrived in the form of two developers who wanted to build a power plant in Grant Town, so they went to the local carpet salesman for some reason. Mr. Manchin, whose grandfather went to work in the mines at age 9, I mean, there is a relationship with coal there, but working at 9 years old in a coal mine, not owning a coal mine, and whose uncle died in a mining accident, helped the developers clear bureaucratic hurdles, which is what you're supposed to do to some extent as a local elected official. Then he did something beyond routine constituent services. He went into business with the Grant Town power plant. Mr. Manchin supplied a type of low-grade coal mixed with rock and clay known as gob. Sounds really super efficient and clean, doesn't it? Typically cast aside as junk by mining companies.
Sup, fam? It's your boy Darwin, aka Darwin_Darko, aka the most reasonable man in America, aka KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen versus Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Joan McCarter is with us just as I jumped into the Joe Manchin story, and there's lots of good detail here if you haven't had a chance to read over it. But yeah, the basic story of it as I took away from it, I guess I just sort of assumed that he and his family had always been, I understood he had a niche coal business, but I figured it was a family thing and he'd always been in on it, and then he used that as, you know, a way to raise money and leverage his money and power into politics, and then rose up the ladder. But it turns out it's kind of the opposite, that he...
yes, kind of the other way around.
Right, that he used his government position to get into coal for the first time. I didn't realize he was in the carpet business. And some very savvy operators at the Grant Town power plant, apparently, which hadn't been built yet, said, hey, a brand new state legislator can help us, you know, as constituent service, get this thing built. So, you know, it's one thing to approach him as the local legislator. It's another thing to say, and we should go into business together because you've been crap at selling carpet. So why not invest in this power plant? Which, and that's not even to get to the part, which was, oh, by the way, this power plant is basically powered by burning the dirtiest crap that can barely produce electricity that we could find. And no one uses this kind of coal. It's garbage at most coal. I mean, it's kind of an interesting, you know, entrepreneurial opportunity, but for the part about it, you know, killing the planet, even worse than regular coal. But the
and
idea
costing
that,
so much more.
Yeah, it's garbage that's barely burnable, and coal miners throw it away. This is crap. We can't sell this. It's awful. If you can burn it, but you got to, I don't know how much more you have to burn, but, you know, tons more of the stuff has to be burned, and I assume even dirtier than regular coal. But even if it's cleaner than regular coal, you have to burn 10 times as much, whatever. It's nonsense. And yet, you know, let's build a power plant that can burn it right here in town. And why don't you be the exclusive provider of the stuff? Because of your intense background in carpet sales, it should work out just great. And that's it. And now he's like rich, and his daughter's rich from other scams too, by the way, along the way. You know, but that's kind of the way it is in families. Once the family gets rich, they tend to stay rich, even if it's not in the same business. doors open up, especially if you happen to be a power broker too. So I don't know what his daughter knows about EpiPens, but not enough to be making the billions of dollars she's made along the way. But, somebody wants to do a favor for something. Look how rich this guy got selling garbage coal. You could be in on this too. You don't have to know anything about it. He's a carpet salesman. It's attractive. And I guess that's it. That's how he built this whole thing. And now he's driving Maseratis and sitting on houseboats telling people to go screw themselves. What a rise. In 1987, he was a loser. And now he's a billionaire genius. I don't know. Is he a billionaire? Maybe not. But
I think millionaire. I don't think billion.
Good enough, right? It's not like he
well, it's enough for a Maserati.
Yeah, right. If that's all you want in life, a houseboat and a Maserati, that's pretty good. That would be, I would say, if he had the opportunity to become a billionaire by screwing even more people, but passed it up and said, I have enough, that would be, good for you. Good mark. But that's new one on me. I just thought he came from, there are people who come from money in West Virginia, usually by exploiting the rest of their neighbors. I thought he was one of them, but as it turns out, he was using you and your power as a voter, the power you granted him to help you do better in life, get health care, maybe some black lung benefits, maybe make a couple of bucks, maybe get some help getting off of opioids, something like that. But it turns out that he was actually more interested in the boat. So sorry, West Virginia, can't help you. Maybe there's a better person somewhere in West Virginia. See if it can make it happen. Anyway, I thought that might be of some interest to you. You're no Joe Manchin fan. You must have read this thing.
I'm not a Joe Manchin fan. Although it's kind of curious after this story broke and everybody's been talking about it. This morning he came out really strongly in defense of Ketanji Brown Jackson.
That's
and
nice.
Railed against the Republicans trying to color soft on crime and talking about it being disgraceful, stuff like that. So, maybe...
He's got some work to do.
Maybe having this story come out has pushed him to be, I don't know, not horrible on something.
I guess so. And if that's the case, great. But yeah, well, he's really got some things to answer for here. But it was, like I said, very informative to me. I thought...
I did not realize that this was... that he used his position to cook. I'm not surprised that he's that corrupt.
Yeah. It explains a lot more. I always had, some difficulty with everybody explaining everything as well. He's corrupt. He's getting bribed by the fossil fuel industry. And it certainly always looked like that. But I don't know. Maybe it's a little more difficult to believe if he comes from money already. Then it was like, well, it's dirty that he's protecting his personal position, but it's not quite as dirty as if he just, said, I'm going to run for office.
Manufactured this position and made it as dirty as possible. And
Yeah. I mean, it's, I don't know. It adds an extra aspect of dirtiness to it for me that it was bad enough as it was. But it's sort of a thing people say all the time, and it has a basis in truth. If you're getting most of your campaign paid for by fossil fuel interests, you're going to feel some responsibility to protecting them because it protects you. And usually at the end of this, you're like, I'm also helping some people with some health care somewhere or something. But his record is not great on that either, and so it's particularly difficult to swallow with him. But the idea that, no, I mean, he is who he is only because they made him, and offered him this deal that will make you rich, and then you will make us rich in return is, I don't know, worse than usual. And so now it's a lot more. Now it's for me, it's easier to believe.
Way more obvious and bald than usual. I mean, there really isn't any attempt to try to make it look like anything else.
Yeah.
It's just corruption, flat out.
Yeah.
And
it's
I don't think they made any real attempt to disguise it.
Mm-hmm.
Here, you sell us this, we'll build this plant, then you, as governor, use your
Yeah.
power to regulate things so that we can keep going.
Right. Like, there's every chance that they somewhere along the line would have said, in West Virginia even, right? Look, we're for coal here, and this is only barely coal. This plant should burn the good stuff that employs a lot of people to mine it. That would have been a perfectly reasonable thing for the West Virginia government to do. Totally pro-coal. It's anti-crap. You're burning awful stuff here.
Yeah.
We want to maintain the reputation of West Virginia for providing quality coal, or even quote-unquote clean coal. But you're doing the opposite. I mean, there's nothing clean about it, but remember, we're trying to pull a scam here. Damn it. Get on board. What's wrong with you? You can't even do the clean coal thing. That's where everybody is in West Virginia now. It says here in the article, by the way, he and his wife are worth somewhere between, you'll love these disclosure forms, somewhere between $4.5 and $12.8 million. Somewhere between 1 and 3 times as rich as I actually am. Right? So somewhere in that. Unbelievable. I mean, yeah. Okay, so at a minimum, $4.5 million. Like, that's... These days, there's billionaires, so he's small potatoes. But in West Virginia, that's huge. And quite honestly, wherever I am or you are, $4.5 million is awesome.
Well, and it makes him a bit of an outlier in the Senate Democratic caucus anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know that there are a lot of millionaires among Senate Democrats. Republicans, yeah.
Yeah, that's where they get them from. But
I can't.
It's
Going
very
through the
uncool.
list in my head, I can't think of many that are up there with that kind of money.
Yeah, well, there are a few certainly, but not. It's not the same as the Republican conference tends to be. It's just an extraordinary story and another angle on how annoying he is. But
there are so many angles on how annoying he is.
Right. Well, I'm
like
glad
the one
he's
that
being
popped
better
up
on the
this
judge.
morning is just a thing. That,
We'll take it.
from
We need
Larry
the vote.
Levitt at KFF. He just tweeted out that new federal data shows Medicaid and CHIP enrollment up over by 15 million during the pandemic, driven by a requirement for continuous coverage during the public health emergency.
Okay.
The public health emergency is going to end. They're going to drop off. So 15 million people on Medicaid and Children's Health Insurance Program are hanging by a thread right now. And because Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema refused to allow the Build Back Better bill, which included an off-ramp for these folks, a way to continue providing coverage for these people, since that can't pass, they're just going to be dropped. And so states and HHS now have to figure out how they can try to fill in with what we've got to provide some kind of place for them to land. And it's a problem.
Yeah. That is a problem. Not if you're driving a Maserati, I guess, but...
Not if you're driving a Maserati and living on a yacht.
Yeah, I guess. Man.
It's just... It's unfathomable to me that they just don't care.
I guess not. And, I mean, I'm sure the draw of the money has got to be powerful, as, the article makes clear. His grandfather goes to work in a coal mine at age 9. His father, I guess, what did they say they did? I don't know. But he, too, may have been in coal mining. He owns a carpet business. It's not going anywhere. And then all of a sudden, the family's extremely wealthy, and the kids have great jobs. Now, Joe Manchin IV runs the Dirty Gob coal operation. His daughter, we know, which has been in the news before, in pharmaceuticals and
EpiPens.
Yeah,
the 400% increase or whatever it's been in the cost of EpiPens. Yeah.
I get the only thing left for her to do to make herself worse is our EpiPens are contaminated with clay, but they kind of work. You got to use 6 of them to every time you're stung by a bee, and they're $400 a piece, but they kind of work.
Just
it is really bizarre to think about how coming from that kind of background, I mean, going into the mines at age 9,
yeah,
how you don't have some sort of holdover of what it's like to be in poverty, what it's like to live like that, and you're in a position where you can make a difference for people whose lives are there.
Yeah.
And instead you choose to take the money and run.
Right. And you say things like, well,
and not even take the money and run, make life worse for those people.
Yes. That's the real thing. And to say to people, there's things I could do to help you, but it's going to make you dependent on the government. My grandfather was mining when he was 9. It's good enough for him. It's good enough for you. Well, was it good enough for him? It really wasn't. Because, I don't know, again, your dad did something different. Your uncle died in a mining accident. That was probably no help. And the best you could come up with to get out of it was, maybe a carpet business. Or poisoning everybody.
Yeah.
I could do that and
I
make
mean,
millions.
the one thing that Manchin has done, he has worked for actual coal miners. Those are the only people he's actually tried to help.
Yeah, I guess.
But I don't think that's from any great spirit of generosity. I think it's to get reelected.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to dig up this disgusting coal, and neither is my son. I need some of you people to do it. I guess that is...
And I'll help you keep your health care if you keep voting for me.
Right. Well,
you and your whole family.
He's not a cool guy.
He's not a cool guy.
I don't know. I thought you might enjoy talking about that a little bit, but it's a little.
But at least he'll back Ketanji Brown Jackson and not buy into the Republican crap on her.
I guess that's good. He certainly could have. It would be very easy to imagine him doing this.
Yes, it would.
So
he would take the Collins way out, the Ben Sass way out, and Mitt Romney's probably looking at it too, saying, well, I'm just not sure about her judicial philosophy.
Yeah, right. And then,
as if that were a thing.
I mean, I guess this is the minimum basic thing you can do and still not be tossed out, I guess, when everybody, like when Lieberman, he's with us on everything except the war. Well, he's got to show up and vote for the minimum basic stuff of Supreme Court nominees and most probably executive nominees. But if not, then, now you're really talking about a guy who's not worth hanging on to if you can't do any of the minimum basic. I know we're all worried about losing control of the Senate, but, I mean, if you don't have it, you don't have it.
Yeah.
So.
Get this Supreme Court nominee, and then, I don't know...
I mean,
can declare war on Joe Manchin.
I guess
it's not going to happen clearly because you look at this budget that Joe Biden just released, and it's President Joe Manchin's budget.
So hopefully he'll actually support that. But by the way, congratulations on getting the White House to issue that budget. Last time you were here, they hadn't done it, and they heard you. I was surprised.
Well, it would have been kind of hard for them to do it while they were actually trying to get this year's budget passed.
Right.
5.5 months into the year.
Mm-hmm. But,
which they did. Yay, us.
Right.
We have a budget.
It went forward.
The new one is not. It has a billionaire's tax. That's a great thing.
Yeah. It won't hurt Joe Manchin, so he's okay with that. He's not a billionaire.
He's okay. Kirsten Sinema won't be okay with that.
Oh, yeah, she's against that. Is she a billionaire?
Yeah, she was the one who was fighting any tax increases for rich people and corporations in Build Back Better. That was her shtick.
Awesome. She's looking to get into some kind of weird coal thing, maybe. I don't know. She's not making she doesn't have that. It's not her money she's interested in protecting. She just thinks someone else will give some of it to her if she's nice to them.
Oh, it's been working so far.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with the results. I can just question their, propriety. But they are rich,
or they are in the Senate.
Are on their way to rich. I don't know what her net worth is, but
I've not heard that about her. But
she's increasing it, I believe.
that's the weird thing about serving in the Senate. I mean, by the way, the salary is not bad either. I know it.
No, most of us could do okay on that salary.
Yeah, right. Like, I'd like to have it. That's a gigantic increase. I'll take it. It's a lot of work, true, but that's.
And again, with cinema, it's not. Just like with Manchin, she's not being at all coy about what she's doing. She's going to Republican donors. She's going to Republican fundraisers. She's cozying up to Republican lobbyists. Yes. She's not making any bones about this. It's bizarre.
It is bizarre. They both have kind of weird backgrounds and story arcs. I guess maybe that's their affinity. I thought it was just, being the outliers and being able to leverage an evenly divided Senate. And they were just first past the post in terms of being the people willing to dig their heels in. But yeah, maybe there's more to it than that. They are both people who have been made by their positions and came from, I guess, relatively humble backgrounds, and then said, wow, I can be a power broker and possibly, on Joe Manchin's part anyway, make a lot of money doing it too. Kyrsten Sinema, I guess, spent her state legislative career playing a too progressive a role to be able to adequately, absorb millions of dollars into her pocket without blowing her cover at the time. But then she just picked a new cover story instead. If I'm going to move up to the Senate, I should have a better story than this, one that will be more compatible with taking money. So she invented a different persona. How strange.
How strange.
We should be sure of who we put in the... There's only 100 Senate seats. We can vet better than this.
We can vet better than this.
But no one thought that
a lot of progressive organizations are looking at how they vet better in the future. Having been landed with her. I don't know if HRC still has. I don't know if Human Rights Campaign has finally abandoned her. Pretty much everybody else has.
Okay. That's an interesting question. Yeah, and I mean, I guess she got by in the first time, Arizona. I don't know. All right, any Democrat who's willing to put their name on the ballot and has some kind of an organization, great. We'll never win Arizona. But then we did. Although the people who won it for her are probably pretty pissed.
Yes, they are indeed.
Maybe we should have backed someone else. And in fact, maybe we did back someone else, but she won anyway in the primary, and here we are.
Well, a lot of progressive groups, a lot of LGBT groups, Latino groups.
Yes.
Sort of the regular coalition of Democratic groups in a state like Arizona worked their butts off for her.
They did, and outside of Arizona, people said, "Well, I'm glad they're trying, but it's Arizona," and they shot.
But then Arizona elected Mark Kelly.
Yes. That's true. So that too, there are better people in Arizona.
There are better people in Arizona. Mark Kelly's been one of them. He's been on a few things, but again, it's Arizona.
Right.
But on the stuff where we've needed him, he's there.
That's good news, right? So, and he's the one that has to run for re-election first.
Right.
So, don't leave him out. If you happen to, build a power plant at any point in the next year and make $1 million, send some to buy some filters for whatever, or think about switching to building turbines, and then help Mark Kelly. So,
all right. So,
yes.
Let's see. We've done Joe Manchin.
Right.
We've done Kyrsten Sinema.
Sure.
We've done Susan Collins. Sort of budget.
Yes.
What else would you like to discuss this morning?
Me? I don't know. This is I mean, maybe. Do you want to get in on any of the crazy stories of the last day or two of the insurrection that continues and the
Ginny Thomas, Clarence Thomas?
Yeah, or the 7-hour gap in the phone records, or
I tweeted and you saw what I thought of when I heard 7-hour gap.
Yeah, how could you not?
I don't know why it's so indelible in my brain, but that image of Rosemary Wood trying to show how she stretched to keep her foot on the button that monitored the Nixon tapes and answer the phone at the same time and hold that position for 18 and a half minutes. I love that picture.
Yes.
I just love that picture.
Well, yeah, it's a classic thing. The phone gap is what does you in. I mean, Woodward must be over the moon on being back in this position, I guess. But or else he's just like, I can't believe that this is all coming down to phone records again and gaps. But boy, it's I don't see how you don't go back to Nixon on it, except that I don't think that the Republican Party, I don't think it works on them again the same way it did. I think the lesson they absorbed, as we know, ironically from the Cheney family, was that we could have gotten past that whole Nixon thing if we had just tried harder.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty
next
amazing.
time we'll try harder, and maybe it'll be an insurrection.
You would.
Which the Cheney family is supposedly opposed to, although Liz Cheney, in her position on the January 6th committee, really doesn't want to have to hear from Ginny Thomas.
Yeah.
Apparently, keeping Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court on her side is where her ethics stop.
Interesting.
Her desire to protect America and our government and our democracy. They go up to the Supreme Court and there.
I could believe that. I mean, I suppose we could reassure her by saying, well, listen, we need to take this. She's not going to say anything anyway. She'll just plead the fifth of everything, and at first just refuse to show up. So let's just start the process. And also, nothing's going to force Clarence Thomas off the Supreme Court. He's never going to resign.
He's never going to resign.
That's not happening. He's probably never even going to recuse himself.
Well, unless, I will hold out. He could be having serious health issues.
Yes, that's true.
He is having serious health issues. You're not in the
Definitely.
hospital for a full week unless you have a serious health problem.
Right. Although I imagine him begging, please don't let me out yet.
I
can't go out there.
I assume he participated in the hearings yesterday in the Supreme Court. All I heard was that he didn't, as he's been wont to do lately, ask the first question. I don't know if he was silent throughout.
Okay.
I don't know whether the Supreme Court is pretending like Clarence Thomas is alive and functioning.
You put a cardboard one
waiting
in his
until
chair.
after November to announce that he's, incapacitated or what.
Yeah.
We just don't know, do we? Because it's the Supreme Court and there's no transparency there.
That's true. And, that'd be a hell of a movie thriller. He's actually dead. They're like, no, there's no vacancy. Nope. That's what we're saying. I don't believe that they would try to pull that off.
No, I don't believe that they would try to do that. And I don't think John Roberts is quite that.
I don't think so. They would be pushing for something quite different, but it is very weird. And I don't know whether he participated. Did they set him up to do anything remotely? I think I had heard that he was just going to read.
I think he's probably doing it. I would assume.
Yeah.
He's doing it remotely.
Okay. I thought that he was just going to say, I'm going to read the briefs, and that's that. That's the extent of my participation. I'll be there I'll participate in the ruling, but I don't know whether they were zooming him in or anything, but. All right, well, we'll find out. Although, if that did happen, then I would assume we would have seen some reports, people saying he appeared to be in good health or something. But I thought he was maybe avoiding the screens.
I've seen nothing about his participation other than he didn't jump in with questions right away.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Did he turn his screen on? Turn your screen on, Mr. Justice. We need to see you. It's a nice picture.
I mean, could we see Alito figuring out some way to create an animatronic?
Yes.
Thomas yes.
Right. That I could
But
believe.
if he could get that past the other justices, I'm not sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, no one will believe it.
Anyway, here's another plug for getting the Code of Ethics to apply to Supreme Court justices.
Yeah.
If nothing else from Congress, if absolutely nothing else, that's got to happen.
Well... Yeah,
I personally would like to see them take up impeachment charges just to put the extra pressure on John Roberts and the rest of the court to say, we can't have this. You got to go.
Well, it would be a lot of fun. But, yeah, they're not going to kick him out. Impeachment is neutered as a tool these days. So, but it would be
all
nice
you've got is the
pressure.
pressure campaign, and you got to do something.
Yeah. Well, whatever makes John Roberts uncomfortable. Good things tend to happen when John Roberts gets nervous and uncomfortable.
Yeah,
So,
even though he's kind of outnumbered now.
yeah.
He still is nominally Chief Justice, and he can still do stuff to
Very
inflict pain on the rest of them.
That's true, and I guess I'd like to see that.
Yes, indeed.
All right. Well, I think that brings us to definitely does bring us to the end of our time together today. But what a busy day. And we'll have, I'm sure, a better clue about what direction the budget is going, although really it's always been written on the congressional side. The usual phrase is just declare the president's budget dead on arrival.
Here's what we know is going to happen.
Yeah.
They're not going to have passed all of the appropriations bills by October 1st, so we're going to have another continuing resolution that will last from October 1 to probably November, what day is the election? The 3rd?
No. Yeah. I guess so. I'm not certain what the election
To
is.
mid-November, and then another one that'll last until early December, and then another one that'll last until December 20th.
Boy. Lame duck continuing resolutions with a possible handover of power in the House as well. I mean, that'll affect everything. If Republicans anticipate taking over,
right,
they'll just, they probably won't want any shutdowns before that happens.
No, they're not. We're not going to have a shutdown, but we're going to have a lot of uncertainty.
All right. Well,
that much is certain.
Yep. It's uncertainty, always certain. Thanks, Joan. We'll catch up with you next week at this
Absolutely.
time. All right.
Been listening
Provided the government
to
isn't
Kagro
overthrown.
in the morning with David Waldman.
Okay, well, that wraps it up for us here. And as you know, we hand things over to Justice Putnam at the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy next. And I haven't clicked on my screen fast enough to tell you what's going on, but I can tell you that he'll be collecting news from all over the world and around the country as well. I see fun stuff on the horizon. Stay tuned.